remarks, so it's good. And also, have
We're
they
now
indicate, the minutes have been approved? Do we have the draft that we can now put up on the website?
Yes,
Okay.
and I will change the title and I will send it along to the town office. So they,
So probably it may not get up until Monday because Webmaster Jen's on vacation this week. So. But
All right.
we'll see that it gets up really quickly.
okay. Thank you for that catch, John. So that's what we know about the Vetro program.
When will the
Thank
questions
you.
come?
Thank you for your work on that. That's
Do
Good.
we know when the questions will arrive, Kathy?
Well, actually, my notes from our earlier meeting was that by, I think, May 13th, he was going to ask us some questions. And that's today. And I haven't seen an email from him today with those questions. So,
Okay, you'll circulate that when they arrive?
yes.
Okay,
And I think that since we know one of the questions is going to be what would be an appropriate place for the central office, could we have that conversation anyway?
Well, it's kind of a central office or, a CO is kind of like, they like are ideally located near where you're going to be feeding the network. And whether or not you want to build a whole building for it out at, when they did it on Cranberries, they built a small little building in back of the Longfellow School to house the equipment. It doesn't have to be very big, kind of like a big shed kind of a thing, but it
I guess
also,
that's the question, how big does it need to be?
right, could also be located in an existing building if there's space. The stuff that was done for the Cranberries, I think, takes up 2 4x8 sheets of plywood on the wall, so they don't, it's not a huge amount of rack space that's needed for that type of stuff, but it depends on if there's a building or place available in a town building already. Of course, that's ideal. Possibly, the options we have are like the fire station in Soamesville, I suppose, or
Well, as you say, it should be close to where it's being fed.
Fed,
Where would that be? Do you think that's going to be at the
well, it depends.
corner or?
Well, people that do most of the fiber to feed internet service providers are Consolidated Communications. They're the ones that provide most of the fiber for places, or you could contract with Spectrum, and those main fiber lines run along the main routes. So I'm sure it would have to be along one of the main route,
So you think Soamesville would be the better location?
Well, it's more central, obviously, but of course, with fiber, it really doesn't truly matter where you are. I mean, we have our central connection for the schools comes into Bar Harbor, and then it goes from fiber from Bar Harbor to the high school, and then from there it shoots out to all the different schools. And there's really no difference in performance up at Trenton or in Mount Desert or Southwest. It's pretty much.
If
The answer to that question is, I guess the fiber place could be wherever we can get an incoming connection sourced, I guess, would be the question. Yeah.
If they're remodeling the Soamesville fire station anyway, and it doesn't take a lot of room, that might be an opportunity.
Right.
But you'd also perhaps want to have an outdoor generator for backup power, which is typical.
Yep. You definitely would need a generator, and you'd need a small little, heat pump, air cooler, heater kind of a thing in the inside to keep the equipment at a reasonable temperature.
They have a generator at the Soamesville fire station already, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think the whole thing for all of the Cranberries, of course, they have a less numbers of people, but I think the total draw on that whole system is maybe 10 amps when it's running full. So it's not heavy as far as electrical needs.
Okay. Well, when I do get those questions from him, I can circulate it to everybody, or should we call a meeting to discuss it? How should we proceed?
I'll circulate them around and start, I guess, but yeah. I mean, there's certainly space, I know, in the basement of the school that we could dedicate to something like that. And I'm sure if a renovation goes through with the town office and fire department space, there might be space that could be available there as well as the fire station. But those are the three locations that come to mind right away. You know, obviously we could also do something at the high school if we needed to. You know, there's room up there too. So those are some of the options.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kath, so you're expecting those questions to be coming soon, right, Kathy? Because we're, yeah.
I was hoping I would have had them by the meeting, so.
All right, should we move on to item 3? Community engagement planning with Island Institute.
I saw Kendra up here somewhere, isn't she?
Yes, she is.
There she is.
So, Scott and I met with Kendra Joe a while back and went through some ideas and thoughts about what we would try to achieve through having these community meetings. And they are, you know, if we are, first of all, the idea is, and this is based on a lot of different input, whatever we plan, we want to do it with community input. So we're building it with the community and not for the community and making assumptions about what people want, but having
Right.
people really weigh in. And that process is going to be critical if we're going to get any kind of external funding, whether it's from the state or grants or anything else. You've got to, you know, there's got to be some level of community engagement.
Right.
And Kendra Joe's recommendation was always make it as transparent as possible. Bring everybody in, make it public, and, you know, be above board on everything. And there are lots of good examples. Although Kendra Joe, I was not able to find the recording of that Chebig Island meeting with Spectrum. That, you know, I was looking on their website and I couldn't find anything about it. So I'd love to know more about that. But after that conversation and all the different things that we should include, we came up with a list of meetings, about 8 meetings. And I had sent this off as a memo to everybody, and I hope you got it. Don't know if you all have it. I can share my screen and show you that memo if that would be.
Sure. I don't remember getting it, but it might be buried in the email somewhere.
All right, so here is that memo to you all. Let me just pull this up. So I sent it end of April. And so the idea was to, you know, dates and times, et cetera, to be determined, but roughly 2 per month, or maybe every 3 weeks, perhaps, something like that, so that we don't lose, you know, we don't lose momentum as we do this. So the idea is have a kickoff meeting where we talk about what it is we're trying to do, what broadband is, what has been done by the town so far, you know, the expansion into Pretty Marsh, the school system, hotspots for COVID, et cetera, what's going on at the high school, and then the update on the police department connections to Bar Harbor. That we introduce a town broadband website as a site for gathering and sharing information and updates and stories, et cetera. That we would talk about, you know, inform people that we're going to be doing a survey. And it would be a combination of online and on paper, because if you don't have internet, you can't answer it online. That we would start collecting stories of how people need it, how they use it, what the possibilities are. We can point out efforts by other communities and the ways that they have expanded services. Introduce funding possibilities from state, federal, or other grant sources. That we introduce the idea of what's going on with Vetro Cares and how we have this opportunity to plan for fiber to the premises or fiber to the home for the whole town. And any plans for future public events, you know, the rest of those meeting sessions. Then have, so that's to introduce the committee and the topic to everybody. Then we would bring in the real experts like Island Institute, the Maine Broadband Coalition, the Connect Maine Authority. And I thought of this later. I'm not sure, should we include the Maine Community Foundation in here too? That might be, they are very strongly in favor of broadband expansion. So that might be a good one to include. So people can learn and talk about it and ask questions, get some updates on what the state might be thinking of this new Maine Connectivity Authority, and to learn more about if we were to go for grant funding, what would be expected and required of us. Then to have a conversation with the Digital Equity Center. While it's called the National Digital Equity Center, it's located in Machias, Maine, it's in Washington County. But it's a good opportunity for people to learn what that topic is all about and how it can provide benefit to a lot of community members. So digital equity and digital inclusivity. So everyone, has a seat at the table. And then with all of that behind us and some real grounding, then to go out to the two incumbents, Spectrum and Consolidated Communications. And the point there is to ask, pointedly, I think, what they have existing for services where in the town and what their plans are for any kind of expansion,
Right.
and anticipated costs for services in the future.
Right.
So we have them separately, but we get to put them on the hot seat for a while there.
Yep.
Then conversations with the League of Towns. It is becoming increasingly clear that the idea of regional development makes so much more sense than town by town. And we are on a natural, we're on an island. So there's 4 communities. So we know where the edges are. So why not just do it as an island if at all possible? But we also know that, that's not so easy to do sometimes.
Yeah.
So,
It's a challenge.
to start that conversation, it was at the meeting this morning that the Broadband Coalition did that I sent around a different email for. There was the operations, the Downey's Broadband, it started off with 1 town or 2 towns, and now there's a 3rd definitely on board, and many more are looking at it. Along the Rockport, Camden, Mid-Coast area, they're talking to a whole bunch of towns there. So really a regional approach is preferred by funders, by the state, by the Connect Maine Authority, et cetera. So it makes sense, and it would behoove all of us to try and make that possible. So, but the challenge is different towns are running at different speeds and different levels of interest. So that's always going to be the snag. And then conversations with some of those other communities so that our town can learn directly from their experience.
Correct.
And again, today there were some good examples of various communities doing various things, taking different approaches and how it has worked for them, what their their rate takes are, or take rates, and what funding mechanisms they had, et cetera. So that's all very helpful to learn from others' experiences. And then, during all that time, I imagine we would be doing all of the survey work so that at the end of that, we can wrap up these public meetings. Maybe it's the first round of them, I don't know. But to come back with the committee to provide what the survey results were, what the design and cost implications would be from the VETRO program, and then make some decisions about how we want to move forward.
Yeah.
So
That looks
that's
great.
our
Great.
proposal for a scheme.
Yeah. I think that's a very ambitious but appropriate layout of how to proceed. Yeah.
I'm gonna pose a question, and you all know your communities much better than I do. Would it make sense to have the League of Towns conversation earlier and just ask to attend one of their meetings, or in case
sure.
some of them wanted to attend some of these to understand a little bit more about what's
Well,
possible?
Boy, I know Derlin, you've been involved with that. I know there has been very little cooperation to get even a kind of a consortium together about cable or anything like that. Or what's your opinion about that?
It probably isn't a bad idea if you want to. I mean, our meetings are once a month. Our next meeting is the 25th. So if somebody would like to attend as part of the agenda, I can put you on anytime, either that or next month or whenever you think that you'd be ready to do that. It never hurts, Wendell, just to
Right.
throw the ideas out there.
And now the League of Towns, is that extending up to Ellsworth as well?
Oh,
or
yeah,
up-
it's Ellsworth, Trenton,
Yeah.
Lemoyne,
Yeah.
all of the island towns, Cranberry Island, Swans
Okay, yeah.
Island, and Acadia National Park.
Yeah, that would be the region. So that would be
Yes.
nice if we could get, it would be worth getting probably the topic hasn't been broached with that group in a while since, at least,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So it would probably be worth doing.
We
What do you
meet
think,
once
Kathy?
a month, every month except for August and December. So we have
Okay.
10 monthly meetings.
Right. Is that something you would want to participate in, Kathy? I mean, maybe one or two
I'd
of
be
us.
happy to, but all of us can go if we want to, right?
Sure.
Are the
Oh,
Ellsworth
yeah,
meetings
yeah.
still?
Yeah, it would be worth certainly bringing it up and just seeing the response to see if it's worth going down that road or not. Yeah.
Yeah, I think collectively we ought to be there. I assume it's a Zoom meeting.
Yes, it is.
And that way, because, with the exception of me, everyone has their different expertise or whatever. I have no expertise. I just,
Oh, come on now. You've got a lot of
Yeah.
experience in life.
but anyway, I mean, instead of putting it all on Kathy's shoulders and stuff, and I said there might
Right.
be input that
Yeah.
some of us could add.
Sure. No, that makes good sense. Yeah.
And you might welcome them to the first couple of conversations, maybe not the kickoff, but maybe the Connect Maine, Island Institute, and the National Digital Equity Center. That way they can hear a little bit about what's happening in the state and then revisit with them what their thoughts are. So potentially attending 2 meetings, just to keep the conversation going. Because I mean, Peggy Schaefer from the Connect Maine Authority will speak probably a lot to the role of a regional effort now, especially on the mainland.
Right.
And the benefit of that when trying to seek state and federal dollars.
Right.
So should we bump them up to our second meeting? We'll definitely let's go to put us on the agenda, please.
Right.
Early.
Yeah. Yep.
And
May 25th is our next meeting. It's a
Okay.
fairly light agenda at this point.
that
Sure.
would be-
June, of course, they haven't even started to build June's agenda yet.
And who typically attends these from the other towns?
Town managers generally, Mike Medell from Acadia Park.
Yeah.
Swans Island has been Sonny Sprague, but Sonny's been laid up. He's had an injury, so he's been in rehab. I don't know if he's going to be available, but it's generally either Stu Marcoon from Lemoyne, who's the town administrator. So that's generally who attends.
Sure.
Well, one of the benefits of this is if Ellsworth and/or
Swans. Yeah.
well, Swans hasn't done it yet, but the Cranberries have. So
Right.
those 2 places have done something already. So we can
Right.
hear from them and everybody else can as well. So that's a good group.
And maybe if you give them a little advance notice, Derlin, they might have other members of their towns that would be, their interest would be piqued maybe to participate as well,
So time-wise, how should we, if we can set dates and times, et cetera, but we're going to need to do a lot of promo work to get this information out there. And I think that we would want to connect with the newspaper, Facebook pages everywhere, to say that these meetings are going to happen.
Right.
And we might not be able to have, some we can probably connect with to set a real date.
Right.
Easier than others.
Right.
But I think as long as people know that there's something coming up and they may want to attend one rather than another. So
Right.
do you think, what kind of frequency do you think we should have?
Well, I know during the summer, it's going to be harder to get people involved, but It'd be nice to be able to have some of the summer residents participate in at least one or more meetings during the summer. Maybe we could have one of the sessions during the summer that would kind of focus on areas that they may be interested in learning more about,
Mhm.
possibly, yeah.
Well, should we have our kickoff meeting after Memorial Day or sometime in May, or should we wait until June, do you think?
Well, it gets busy this time of year, particularly if families have kids, obviously, but so I guess I would leave it up to everybody's discretion as far as what they think would work best, but like we can certainly put it in the school newsletters as well to get information out. I mean, a lot of school families are going to be particularly interested in this kind of a topic, but
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking. Let's do it before
Yeah.
school is out, before everybody switches gears.
everybody goes to the wind. Yeah. So if we can pull it together, great. Yeah.
And do you think, is there any sense of daytime, evening, what works better? Like a 5 o'clock meeting, a 6 o'clock meeting?
Boy, I guess it would depend on everybody's schedule, so unique and different. But if you're going to ask people to participate through a Zoom meeting, I imagine, is that what we're thinking about?
Yep.
Although we're hoping to do a real graduation in person this year. It's like, ooh.
Really, that would be good.
I think probably in the evening or late afternoon or early evening is probably the most likely to get more participants, obviously. But, with a lot of sports activities and things, those are usually done by 5 or so. So.
All right. Kendra, Joe, for the meeting with Island District Broadband Coalition Connect Maine Authority, should we reach out to those? Is that something that you can help us arrange, or how would we proceed on that one?
Either way, I'm happy to ask Peggy and Andrew if they would want to join a meeting, as long as we have maybe a date and time or 2 tentative dates and times. But if we're looking to, maybe late May, early June, there's a better chance that any day and time will be good. So I'm happy to do that if you want me to take a little bit off your plate.
Okay. That would be great. Thank you. And you think then too, late May, early June is better?
Yeah, I mean, I think you need
Give people a couple of weeks to fit it in their schedule, probably.
Yeah, and so I forgot the kickoff. So if your kickoff is probably either the last week of May or, well, you'll need a little more time than that. So first week of June. Your kickoff is the first or second week of June.
Yeah.
Then I'd probably follow it up. I mean, summer is busy. I would record them. I would keep expectations a little low, but continue to point people in every one of them to, if the broadband webpage is up, that there are recordings there for people to watch, to stay up to date. And just, I would keep them moving, maybe every 2 weeks. That way it's fresh in people's minds. You're not going a whole month and then here's another broadband something. Right. It shows that there is an urgency and active work occurring. So.
Yeah, that makes good sense. Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, why don't I try, and I can reach out to Susan from the National Digital Equity.
Yep. Do you have Susan's email?
I do, yes.
Okay.
I knew her before this, early on, in early 2000s, I had some interaction with her. And the creation of Axiom in itself is a great story,
Yeah.
It's I don't have something, I'm going to create something. I need broadband, I'm going to create a company to get it there. So,
yeah.
And then moving on from that into the digital equity is great.
When was Darlene, when was the June meeting for?
League of Towns? Hold on a second, I'll tell you. June 22nd is the June meeting.
Okay. So you could even have, so June 22nd, you could have the Connect Main Authority meeting the 23rd or the 24th or 25th, if you prefer Friday. And your kickoff, that gives you a little time for the kickoff beforehand.
Yeah.
And that way they're able to join that meeting if they'd like and hear what's going on.
Yeah.
And then National Digital Equity Center be that first week of July.
So Kathy, do you think we're ready to go on to the speed test? Or,
Sure.
I'm trying to get all these dates in here.
okay,
So you're thinking, do the League of Towns and then the next day or two have the Broadband Coalition and sort of back to back?
Yeah, so that way the League of Towns is able to join that conversation.
Right.
Okay, but you're gonna go to the League of Towns in May anyway.
Oh, never mind. You're gonna go the May 25th date?
Yes,
Okay, then never mind. Ignore what I said.
okay. Well, so that we could move. the
Yep, you could bump
Broadband
those up then.
Coalition, make it sooner, so. okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I misheard. I thought that the 25th was too soon.
I mean,
Yeah.
if there's a lot of interest on the League of Towns meeting, then, you know, the Broadband Coalition or some of those other groups we might want to invite them to the June meeting as well, if they're interested in pursuing it on a more regional level. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we should probably keep going, because it's not just gonna be one conversation, but, you know, in the May meeting, we're asking, is there interest? In the June
Right.
meeting, we'll say, well, now that you've gone back to your towns and you've come back, is there interest? You know? So
Right.
we could be
Yeah.
regulars on there, I'm afraid, Derlin, so.
Yeah, and if that Connect Main and National Digital Equity Center conversations, if those happen around that time or before, then they're able to process some of that information as well.
Right.
Okay, all right, so we can keep that like,
Let's see, next week, if there's any materials that you want to have as part of that conversation that you want included, you should get those to me by probably 19th or the 20th at the latest.
Yeah, I mean, that outline that Kathy had as far as the topics to be covered, that's pretty good information they might want to see. Yeah.
If you want to send that to me, I can make that as part of the meeting
Okay.
agenda.
and is it okay as is, or do you want it, you know, should we eliminate some of the original material or not? Or
I didn't read it
adjust
that
it?
carefully. If you want to, when you send it to me, if you want to send it to me, I can take a look at it and see if I think it needs to be added.
Yeah, you could have some proposed dates on each one of those steps. Maybe sometimes that helps people wrap their mind around things a little better. Yeah.
And maybe we could put the initial part, some kind of narrative intended for the League of Towns to say, we think a regional approach would be better. We're hoping you'll join us, that kind of, make a pitch in this email. So
Right.
it would be a memo from our committee, our whole committee, to the League of Towns.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes
And
good sense.
also as part of the agenda, let me know who's going to be the lead spokesperson so I can identify that person for the meeting.
that'd be Kathy.
I was going to say it, but I got my mouth. She's very articulate and we're blessed to have her. Yes.
Careful what you ask for, huh?
Yeah.
But I like the backup band there as well, okay?
Oh,
So,
yes. That's great. We're glad
And
to
you,
have-
Kathy, representing the broadband committee?
yes,
Okay,
do that.
got it.
And you need that by next week sometime.
Yeah, I'd like to get it by midweek, so Friday mornings I send out the final packet, so I'll be sending out the final agenda on the 21st.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right, so we'll put down some proposed dates on all of this and,
Yeah, I think that helps to make it seem more real.
yeah. Exactly. We're moving along with this. So for the provider contacts, whom should we use for that kind of thing?
As far as from
Spectrum
From
and
Spectrum.
Consolidated.
Boy, they used to have a kind of a town representative lady. I could make a few calls and figure out who that is, if it's the same person or not.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so it's, I can save you a couple calls. So for Spectrum, it's Melinda, Kenny,
Oh, good.
or Shelley
Shelley, that was the name I remember.
with a
Shelley
W.
Ridgenback.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
She's still there. Oh, good.
So yeah, an email would be sent to both of them and then they would decide who's
Yeah.
covering that area.
And can somebody send me those things and I can reach out to them and try and set up dates, etc.
I can send you their emails.
Thank you.
Oh, Kendra.
Or Consolidated, you have that too?
Yeah. Consolidated probably has the most fiber across the state because they just supply it to everybody else. So, yeah. That's kind of a little hidden known part of their business that's not really publicized a whole lot. Yeah.
And who is there a primary contact from them to this town or island as well?
Boy, I really don't know. I would have to do a little research on that one, I think.
So do you mean who you would reach out to from Consolidated?
Yes.
Yeah.
It'll be Jeff Nevins or Sarah Davis. And I'll send you both of those.
She knows everybody.
I do this a lot. I email them a lot.
Thank you.
They tired of me yet? So
Probably. They probably think I'm a nuisance, but it's okay.
but go for it. I have to tell you, did anybody else join the meeting that the Broadband Coalition did today with the other communities who sort of the municipal digital frontier? Because one of the presenters they had was from a town, Longmont, Colorado.
Oh.
And he is now working for the municipal creation, the municipal network. And it's a community of like 85,000 people. And they are rated as the fastest municipal section in the country, I think. Yeah. But he used to be on the other side of all those tables because he worked for the incumbents who was going to town meetings and saying why they didn't want to have it. No, that's not going to work. You don't want to do that. And he finally came around and now he's working for the town itself. So
there you go.
It's a great story.
Huh.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. If we do succeed in this, there are those issues of exactly who you're going to have run it, kind of thing. Yeah, that's a long road down to worry about. We won't go there yet quite yet.
Okay, we should move ahead, I guess, because we're
okay.
High-speed test at high school, Wendell?
Yeah, I've enabled at the school in Mount Desert and at the high school and Trenton. I've all agreed to have a guest network available. Right now, it's currently available with a little bit of a throttled speed. But when we have a date and time in mind, I just have to click a few boxes on the management website and it'll ramp up to full speed. People just have to, there's a captive portal. When they sign on, they just have to agree to use it in appropriate ways. So that's available and we just have to set a date. I mean, other schools are talking about it. I mean, I control the stuff for Bar Harbor and Southwest and Trenton, and they all have similar equipment, and Swans already has it. I have it turned on for them. So if you go on their back ball field, you can get online there. But so we just have to pick a date and time, and I can throttle it up, whenever.
So this is kind of like, is this like a speed test? I mean, a test drive?
Yeah, I mean, it's allow people to see what's
possible.
What's possible. We have currently at the high school 10 gigs of incoming service. It's throttled a little bit because we have to run it through a firewall to do, strip out any ransomware or any of that kind of junk that's floating around the network in the world. But so it's top throughput of a little over 6 gigabits per second. So that's pretty good.
It seems to me that at the League of Towns meeting, if we could give them a date, that they could send out to their citizens, right?
Yeah, and they can come by. I mean, if we can get, if people from Ellsworth wanted to go to Trenton, certainly they could try it out there in the parking lot too, but
Wendell, can you, if we want to get word of this out, so the idea is, this is to let a lot of people know what can happen if you have really great, strong, high-speed access. But we might want to reach out to people who don't necessarily have that or aren't online at all. They can borrow equipment to see what
yeah,
it's.
I mean, I could bring some, Chromebook laptops or something up and have a little table set up if it's a nice
Ooh.
day or whatever.
That would be great.
Obviously, when you talk about bandwidth and you talk about a certain quantity, if you get one person on it, oh, it's really, really fast. You get 100 people on it, it's divided by 100. So it really depends, so it's a very fluctuating thing. Just like when you subscribe to any internet plan, they always say up to. It's a function of users on at the same time and what those users are doing.
Wendell, when you turn it on, how long would it be up for?
Well, I can turn it on I can schedule it ahead of time and it automatically turns on and turns off, or I can just turn it on and then for a day or two or a weekend or something like that. And
So talking more like days, not the summer.
yeah, I can do it for the summer too. Once school is out, it's not obviously something we have to be concerned about bandwidth as much for the in the building use. So we could certainly have it maybe available for the whole summer, even if I'd have to just get agreement from all the admins on that ahead of time, but it might be a possibility. Yeah,
I'm told, I don't know if it's anecdotal or if it's factual, but the performance degrades when tens of thousands of people like me show up in the summertime.
Well, yeah, this is through the main research and education network, so it's a whole separate feed. It doesn't come through commercial pipelines.
No, I mean, it's a good thing that because
Right.
if I'm at my house and saying, gee, the performance is crappy, it was good in March, but now it seems to be going a lot slower. But I go to the, I mean, I see much difference March on Woods Road versus your facility, because I get 100 megs in my house.
Right.
But
for a lot of
time, I might see a difference.
Right. For a lot of people, their equipment is probably going to be the limiting factor. I mean, most laptops, their wireless cards, unless it's a super brand new laptop, are maybe capable of receiving 500 megs up and down. So there's, a limiting factor for the actual equipment. Even the most modern equipment, unless you spend a lot of money to get a 10 gig network card, you're limited by a gig.
Okay.
But that's still pretty good.
I would just advocate for as wide a window as possible.
Sure. Yeah.
By the time people read about it and find some time to go do it, it would just be simpler than to say I drove half an hour and it wasn't turned on.
At Mount Desert, I have one that's kind of pointed out. We have a high speed, very high capable one pointed out towards the greenhouse because there was a lot of outside learning happening on the lawn. And I was actually able to connect to it down on the marina, at the marina, which is about a half a mile away. So it kind of floods the town. I hope the town doesn't glow too much at night. I don't know. But people, all they have to do is look for MDI_RSS_guest. And that's the network to join. And they just have to agree to use it in appropriate ways through a captive portal before they, hop onto it.
Well, that might be, not to be a naysayer, but if we had that open all summer, that might be an issue, just because I think everybody and their brother's going to hear about it and be out on the network that you necessarily don't want on it.
Yeah, the library has a open Wi-Fi system, and they have 100 meg, of course, and people can use that within proximity of about 100 feet of the library as well. So, but
I before we had decent broadband and we were stuck with Fairpoint, I, like others, would go to one of the libraries or just sit near a cell tower and use the cell tower. And I'd be governed more by how close am I. So I don't know that people drive a long distance. So I'm not as some people are interested. Most and some residents might find out about it. The tourists probably wouldn't, because they're
Right.
totally unaware of anything going
Right, and
on.
you know,
around them.
we could come up with a compromise too, something that's, like 10 or 20 megs, just leave it on for the summer at that rate, which wouldn't compromise the schools network at all, but it would provide an additional resource for people in the areas.
Well, there might be some value to, it would be a good resource, Wendell, that's
Yeah.
true. But as a demonstration,
Sure.
if we said like the first Saturday of every month,
Yeah.
starting in June,
Yeah.
between these hours, if you go to these parking lots, you can access it. Here's the code to get in and see how
Right.
it is yourself.
Yeah.
And on this particular date or that particular date, Wendell will be there with equipment, if you don't already have it, to demonstrate how it works.
Sure, yeah, those sound like good plans. I'd be glad to support any dates and times like that.
Does that make sense to anybody else on the committee?
Yeah, it does to me.
Sounds good.
Kathy, are we, as part of the community forum meetings, are we planning to go to an SRA meeting?
I haven't heard if they're going to have them this year.
Oh,
But I was contacted today from the new secretary to the SRA, which is Tracy Aberman, because she's preparing the newsletter. And so I can bring her this news information from this committee that we're, trying to roll things out, get the community engaged and do some planning. And we're going to have these conversations and more information will be forthcoming. How about that?
yeah, if they do end up meeting, I mean, that's a nice captive audience
Yes,
with
it is.
with well-connected people.
Yes, it is. I can ask her also. I'll ask Tracy. Any live SRA meetings this year? Derlin, do you know if they're doing that?
No, I haven't heard a word about what their meeting schedule is gonna be, Kat.
Okay. So would we agree that the first, arbitrarily, the first Saturday of every month
Sure.
at the
Yeah.
schools?
Yeah, it's just a few clicks for me to do, so I can do that. Only take a couple minutes. So yeah.
And do you want to set a time between 9 and 5 or 9 and 9, or does it matter?
No, it doesn't really matter.
Anytime
After,
of the day on a Saturday.
yeah, I can set it to happen at midnight, and the carriage can turn into a pumpkin at midnight the following day.
Midnight to midnight. Okay, that makes it pretty easy.
Yeah.
And do you want to commit to when you might be there?
Well, obviously, if we're going to do a lot outside, it would be a bit weather dependent. I wouldn't want, unless we can get that nice tent that they use for the town meetings. Sorry.
Big one.
So, certainly, can have a couple of devices out there for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe you want to let us know when you can do it and we can publicize that.
Sure. I'd say probably after school's out would be better for me, because it gets a little crazy getting all the devices back and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Or maybe July, sometime at the July event or something.
Yeah, that probably would work. Yeah.
All right.
Somebody keeps calling me here. Go away.
Anything else on that? Should we move on to survey details and logistics?
Sure.
Sure. I think I sent out to everybody on the committee that report I generated off the town of Mount Desert speed test site that's been up and running for a while. It had some interesting data on there. It didn't quite have enough reports to consist of what they consider a equitable sample. I think they wanted at least 100, and I think there were like 63 or 64 people who have done speed tests from their locations in Mountain Desert. I think I had shared that little PDF with everybody, just showing the results, so we could obviously use that as kind of a frame of reference of what's typical, I guess.
Well, and I would hope that after we have some of these meetings that those tests will jump up.
Right. That's good data. They kind of break it down, and they break it down by provider, and they also break it down by people who don't have any service. I don't know how they can break it down by people that don't have service. Because how would you take the test if you don't have to? I'm not quite sure how they can include that data, but maybe Kendra can speak to that. Maybe there's a way that they know that. I don't really know. Yeah.
Oh, no, that's a good question.
Yeah. I saw that. It's like, oh, tests with no service. It's like, oh, how would that
How do you
work?
Well, on the main Broadband Coalition speed test.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so people can log into a public, or you could go to your library and put your
Address.
address in, and then
That's
it puts
how that
a black dot on your address. Or
Okay.
if you use a phone, it's like the only time we encourage people to use things that aren't
Right.
their home laptop and stuff. So then they put a
That's where
black dot.
So that's where that could come from. Okay, so we might have to explain that a little bit, and how to people to do that, but it's been, I think Mount Desert had quite a few. I did pull the results from some of the other towns, and I think at least I have it right on the front page of the school newsletter, and I think most of the school webpage. So I think that's where most of the test results have come from. But it put that link on other town facing websites if you wanted to as well. Yeah.
As far as the survey goes, we have not defined what the survey questions are yet.
Right.
We still need to do that.
Right. One of the first questions is, do you have service? Yes or no? Are
Would
you
you like
happy
me to
with it?
send you some examples
Yes,
of surveys?
yes.
Sure, that'd be great. And for people that do have service, we could convert those questions into a Google form, and then when they completed it, would give us a nice spreadsheet of all the results.
Yes.
And we can often, for the paper ones, then somebody could just input them to, so we have all the data in one place.
Is that the kind of information that should be kept? Does the town have survey capability, and should it reside there, or do we need another alternative?
We don't have a survey capability as such, Kathy.
There's a lot of companies you can get. I mean, SurveyMonkey or anybody that has a Google account can generate a Google form. Or I could certainly do that for you through the school account, or we can. Who hosts the town's email? Is it a Gmail service hosted by somebody else, or is it a private email server?
We have Office 365.
Office 365. I think there's some surveys and stuff you can do through that. Maybe Teams or one of those programs has some surveying tools as well. But yeah.
Well, and we have an account with SurveyMonkey, so we.
Oh, you do? Perfect. Yeah, that would work.
We can do that, and we have used it once or twice already. So.
Right. Yeah. That's a good tool. Yeah.
Yes, it is. But if you want to generate a Google form that we can
yeah, you can link into it.
link to it, that would be great.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to catch up here. So the survey questions are being written by whom? Or have they been written already?
Kendra was going to share some examples.
Okay,
I think.
great. So I know when the survey that I was part of, the last round was written, we didn't always ask good questions in the survey. So I like to,
it was a good first attempt.
Yeah. So having somebody who's done it before for a living would be helpful. So
yeah, I think Kendra's probably gone through this once or twice.
Yes, and we have someone else on our team, Bria White, who once you have a draft of a survey, I would probably send it over to her. She's a bit more in the weeds on surveys than I am.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I think the shorter the better.
Yes.
Right.
And every question we ask needs to be something that we care about the answer.
Right.
Some questions I wouldn't know what you would do with the answer, so why even bother asking it?
Right.
So. Yeah.
Okay, Kathy, you want to move on to the planning grant?
Sure. So I attended a session by the Connect Maine Authority recently. They have opened up their planning grant opportunities. They're due the end of May. And it's a fairly comprehensive process. They have two phases, either people who are at the very initial phase or people who have gone a bit further beyond that process. I want to find, I have too many notes around here. So you need to pre-qualify as a community. There are a lot of requirements to getting the Maine community, Connect Maine Authority funding. You need to figure out how it is you're going to spend it, what the costs are, provide some budget. You need to say who's on the committee. Do you have these groups represented? They want to know that you're a viable option before they give you any money to spend. So I'm not sure that we're in a position yet to go for that. But I think that some funding, do we need funding? Is there anything that if we had funding, would we spend it on? I think paper surveys and mailing it out, that's one thing. Do we need to hire a consultant to bring us all together to keep this moving along as opposed to volunteers doing this? So I sort of wonder, do we need money? How would we use it? And should we try and figure out how we might get money from one source or another to supplement this? So I think that this committee has, we don't have our own accounting line in the town budget at all. We sort of come under the umbrella of the Economic Development Committee. And I think that they were just approved for $10,000.
Right.
And so I just wonder if we had money, what would we do with it? And is it something we should consider pursuing, and when would be the right time to do that?
Right. I mean, you might want somebody to do a little website. There might be a few dollars that could be spent on a basic kind of website or a page off of the town's website. There might be somebody that you'd want to pay a little bit to develop that, or that's a possibility, or like he said, the surveys themselves, postage, or somebody to hand them out to people well, we don't have too many public events anymore, so. but that's going to change, I think. So. I'm hoping.
Oh, good.
The Connect Maine first phase 1 planning grant, they've recently capped at 5,000. And because it is really for community outreach surveying, what you're doing right now, and you don't need a lot of money for that. Most planning grant funders hesitate to fund consultants early on in the process, because typically what happens if you bring in a consultant a little too early, the committee doesn't move forward with their own community engagement. It relies solely on the consultant. You're not building those relationships and creating that same kind of information share between you and the community, and it can kind of end up really hurting efforts later on.
Right.
Phase 2 is a little bit more because it's typically for a feasibility study and potentially RFP as well, if you kind of move forward that quickly. And there are communities that can do a feasibility study on their own. You're working with Vetro, so there's potential that you could do a lot of that work without needing a consultant. But again, volunteer capacity, if you need that kind of extra set of hands. Community engagement is probably the one piece where the committee still needs to be actively engaged on community engagement and not rely on the consultant for it, because it's just not going to be as strong as it should be to move forward, kind of, especially if you're going to get to the point of a large financial ask or goal from the community.
That makes good sense. Yeah.
There are also, Connect Maine Authority is open now for a planning grant. They'll be open again for planning grants probably in the fall. Maine Community Foundation is open for planning grants, I think think their deadline will be August 1st. I don't know if their application is up right now, but I do know that it'll be open this summer. And then the Island Institute, we have a rolling deadline.
And how typically, so feasibility studies are the greatest area of these kinds of funds for planning grants?
Oh, sorry. For kind of that second phase, yes. So it's kind of, you do some community outreach survey, and you might request, $2,000 to $5,000 to cover postage, paper. If you are paying or offsetting the cost of utilizing someone from a town or nonprofit's time. And then that next financial hurdle is a feasibility study if you hire out a consultant for it.
Mm-hmm. And generally there have to be matching funds as well, right, from the town?
We asked for a 1-to-1 match. It can be partially in kind. We just feel like having even $1,000 from the town makes the select board more engaged in the process and committed to moving this work forward than if there's no funding. I don't think Maine Community Foundation does not require a match, and I don't recall on Connect Maine Authority.
Okay.
I would, at least in phase 1, I don't think they require a match.
Derlin, I'm thinking about the mailings that the town does every year anyway, is the tax letter. Would it be possible if we had a printed form to send that, because that goes out by a hard copy to every property in the town?
Yeah, that could happen.
And so it would save a lot on effort and postage if we could send it along with that.
Yeah.
What would be the time frame for that?
Those generally, we have to have those to the printers in early July. So you'd want to have everything wrapped up on that probably late June, but I can get a hard date on that, but I'm thinking late June is probably your time frame.
Okay.
Because we try to get the tax bills out by the 15th of July. But the printers are the ones that actually stuff those. We don't do that here.
Okay, that's good. So if we had a paper copy that we could include in there, we would get to everybody in town.
You would. Everyone that's got a tax bill, yeah.
Okay. Kendra, I see you have to leave. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Oh, she's gone.
No.
She's quick.
So I'm wondering, maybe we need to, we have those copies that those different surveys that Kendra just shared with us. Do we want to focus our entire June meeting on getting that
Together
and finished up, Kathy?
I think that's a good idea. Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if I'd put much more on the agenda beyond that. That could take some time to do, but.
Right.
Sense.
Okay.
And then I think what we all need to do is read through all those different surveys and kind of make notes on what you like or dislike about each, just do some cherry picking.
Right. Questions that are pertinent to our location. Yeah.
But like John said, I don't think we want to ask anything that we're not going to use that information for. So I think we have to be very mindful about,
So she just sent a bunch of sample.
Yeah.
Oh, look at all of those. Wow, that's great.
Yep.
You know what I will do is I'll collect these and put them in our shared Dropbox folder.
Oh, good. That's a great use.
Under Island Institute and labeled sample sample questionnaires. How about that? So that you don't have to go digging for emails, but you can go to that one location and look at them all there. How's that?
Sounds good.
I got like 14 drop boxes, so I have to find the right one.
I can send you another link.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll let you know when I put it in there. And I thought if it's worthwhile at all, I have put some other things in the Dropbox folder. So I'm trying to keep it fairly organized, agendas and minutes, but the Connect Maine Authority, the Island Institute, Tilson, Vetro, et cetera. And there are some good sample documents in there of what other towns have done in their report to the town. I've started an Excel sheet that had some, some websites that we might go to, so you can just click on it and go see what some town has. So it's.
Thank you. Robert Frost would be proud for your instinctiveness with crevice and burrow. Yeah.
So Kathy, anything more with the planning grant?
No, well, I guess the only question then is for Derlin. If we came up with an expense, and would this survey, if it's going out with other stuff in the town, would that count as an expense that we would have to account for, or would that just be a town expense?
That would be a thing that you're a town committee, so we wouldn't charge the town committee for that.
Okay.
We would just get that and put that, and have that as part of the envelope. So I always send out my annual newsletter in that same thing, so we could just stick another. I don't know, I can't remember if the broadband committee put it 1 year. I don't know, John, do you remember, did we put some sort of an inside in the town tax?
We had a little postcard, I think, didn't we? Maybe, I thought we did a little
Is that
postcard.
where the postcard went into
Yeah.
that? Yeah, so.
Postcards.
So it's not an unprecedented thing, and there's no charge.
Right.
Great. So for the planning grant, I just get the sense that we're not ready to figure out what it is we're going to do. If the expense for phase 1 was just for paper and postage, then we've got that covered. So we don't need a planning grant at this time, but
Right.
just want to keep it in mind that for the future, we might need that kind of funding. So.
Right. Sounds good.
So update on state proposals?
Okay, so the, first of all, let's see, which word. The Connect Maine Authority has made a recommendation that they approve the designation of the term broadband service as at least 100 up, 100 down megabits per second for, that would qualify as broadband service.
Right.
If you have 50-10, then you are considered unserved. If you're between those two, you are underserved.
Right.
This is a lot higher than what the FCC currently has.
Correct.
It would mean that we might have many more locations in town that would be considered unserved, and that might help us in any future planning or, funding mechanisms, et cetera.
Right.
So that's one thing. They did that at their April meeting. That was their recommendation. They will act on it at their May meeting. And so they have a time period where you can put in information if you want. You can comment on it. So they're taking comments during this period, and then they'll make the determination in May.
Right.
The other thing is that the governor has suggested funding for a whole new and much bigger, more authoritative connection authority.
Right.
And
there's only two people currently, I believe.
exactly. And so, it's sort of, right now, the Connect Maine Authority is responsive. They're reactive to what people want to get. This new authority, I think the idea is that they're really going to be making big investments into a network around the state, that there's much more at stake, and that they're really going to be putting money into it. And they're expecting to get a lot of federal money to be able to do this. So I don't think it's a done deal yet. I'm sure it has to go to the legislature, and it'll be mashed apart here and there. But that's what their proposal is. And so, in a year or so, we could see a very different landscape on what's going on with all of these state level things. So in a good way.
I think that's very positive news. I mean, it seems like me that they're laying groundwork to really promote the idea of internet access being a true part of infrastructure.
Right, I know they came out. The FCC came out with that grant this week for low income and need-based, where you can get up to $50 a month credit towards an internet service plan. I know, based on if your kids get free and reduced, or if you're at certain income levels, that's
Yep.
available now, which is kind of good. So that's, things are moving forward. I think the state probably, that Connect Maine money, I think they approved and it went to bond obviously before this year. So their fund is kind of not as great as I think it would be if it had been voted on now, but it's a definite start. So that's good. Yeah. But if you look at that lens of 100, and then you look at the results that were on that survey, for the tests so far that have been sent out, I think we have maybe 2 or 3 tests in the town of Mount Desert. Probably the school and the library are the only 2 places that qualify currently. So
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think they're building it so that the statistics look much more dire than what they would today.
correct. Yep.
You know, the only other thing on the state level of conversation is Lily Pugh couldn't join us today. She had some other work interfere, but she called me to get this message out. And this was she did join that Maine Broadband Coalition meeting today. And part of the conversation was, and I think I was actually the one who raised the question, was, all right, Down East Broadband, you have your own utility, you invested in it, et cetera. Do you own the poles or are you leasing it? And it came up again and again that leasing poles was the way most people do it around here. Colorado was a whole different situation. And that it sometimes takes a very long time to have the pole owners get back to you with any answer, so that they're difficult to work with. And if that is going to be a time and money suck on any project, Lee was wondering about the responsibility of either the state or some other entity to put pressure on those companies to make these pole access more available. You know, and
it's the whole make ready cost thing. I think when we did the project out to Pretty Marsh, it was about a 4-month timeline before Spectrum got responses from Consolidated about the poles, and then it was another month or 2 to schedule it all, and then they have to go and look at each pole, and if it's a very cumbersome process, truthfully. That's why
that'd be huge if they could loosen that all up, I would think.
Yeah, out on Cranberries, there was so much of an impediment actually that they found it was easier to just put in their own fiberglass poles that they planted alongside the regular poles. So there's extra set of poles that carry the fiber out on Cranberry.
That's ridiculous. Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
Yeah, it was where they could do it for like 1/10 of the cost of what it would cost to attach it to the existing poles.
Well, and that's what I was wondering about. Is there a cost savings if you just did it yourself? You don't need to spend the time or money accessing other people's structure.
Yeah, it gets a little ugly, but when you have all these extra poles around,
Yeah.
That's an issue, obviously, but
well,
it would be nice if we lived in Florida where everything could be buried underground.
The other thing that Lily mentioned was that, perhaps when Angus King, who is a strong supporter of all of this, when he's around this summer, maybe we should invite him to some of our, a meeting, maybe one of our public meetings. He can weigh in and talk about the importance of this, and see about on a federal level, because this is not just this community, this is across the country that the incumbents have this role.
Yep.
And the last thing she said was, as we reach out to during that proposal of all the different public meetings we would have, we were talking about reaching out to the incumbents, but we should not lose sight of other smaller entities that are based in Maine that can really have a good impact on installation and creating the structure, like GWI, Axiom, and Union River communities or communications. So just wanted to put that plug in.
Yeah, there are smaller ones, but these companies are growing as they do more work, obviously. So worth including everybody.
Well, I have another Zoom meeting in 15 minutes.
And you need a little break here, get a drink between.
More than a drink, but
Yeah, liquid water, something.
All right.
so
Uh, Make a motion to adjourn?
Kathy, before we adjourn, could I just ask you how do you want the agenda item to read for the League of Towns? What do you want to say? What do you want to give them as a teaser as what this agenda is going to be about?
something along the lines of digital equity on MDI. I don't know.
And all the towns, obviously.
Yeah, that's true. That's right.
Digital equity for Kathy Miller from Mount Desert Broadband Committee, topic of digital equity and League of
Digital
Towns service
expansion?
area.
Just broadband expansion on a regional basis?
Yeah, enhanced broadband availability, Yep.
All right, I'll put enhanced broadband availability.
But it doesn't really, I mean, we can make sure, but I think the idea of the digital equity is a key piece to this because
Right,
that makes people think about haves versus have-nots.
right.
Put advanced broadband availability and digital equity. How's
Yes.
that for-
Yep.
Yes.
how's that for a good topic?
Yeah, that's one of the keys with these municipal and community broadband approaches is you can supply much higher bandwidth at much lower cost. So, what would be a $50 a month plan, you could easily afford to provide 100 service, where Spectrum to get something like that is, hundreds of dollars a month. Yeah.
That was one of the things I added was a screen from the company in Colorado that has, wanted to show you, well, here are the rates that they had was 1 gig symmetrical for $70 a month.
Yeah.
100 symmetrical for $40 a month.
Right.
And then they had smaller systems where you could, if you were income qualified programs, and then they had some sharing programs, so it was free.
Right.
With certain criteria.
Certain places, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that's it definitely reduces the cost. I mean, of course, there's that initial investment that not always is factored in because some of that's paid for through grants and such, but
So,
sounds good. Well, we made good progress.
Okay, so we'll, so again, the next meeting, what date is that, Kathy, offhand?
June 10 at 4:00
Okay, and we're gonna be focusing on those,
on the survey.
the surveys. So everyone, please take a look at all those different samples, or maybe you have your own idea about questions. But let's really nail that next month.
And I'll
Perfect.
collect them, put them in there, and I'll send you a link to the folder again so you can find it easily.
Yep, and then Derlin will get us a link for the League of Towns
Yes,
meeting.
I'll send the committee the agenda with the link right on. it.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
gang, thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
Very good, thanks Kathy.
Thanks, Carolyn. Bye.
Bye-bye.